Hello and welcome, everyone. We're excited to have you here today. We have some great stuff to show you about changes that we've made and that are coming in Windows Update Management for Intune. My name is David, and I'm the product manager for Windows Updates in Intune. And I'm joined with some people that I've worked with a lot over the last year to continue to make the product even better. Please introduce yourselves.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Williams. I'm a product manager in the Windows Update for Business Deployment service, and I own the driver update feature.
Hi everyone, my name is Angie. I am also a product manager in the Windows Update for Business Deployment service, and I own feature updates.
Hi everyone, I'm Monty. I'm engineering lead on Windows Update Management feature in Intune.
All right, so today we're going to talk about some lessons we've learned about managing drivers. And as you probably know, our big release over this year was the driver management feature. And by working with a number of you, we've gotten some really great feedback. We've learned some great things that we think are going to be useful to you as we share them with you and help you to have better results in managing your drivers. And then building on that, we're also then going to talk about some of the things that we're working on that will also make your job in managing drivers even easier that we've learned from the private preview and again from talking with so many of you since we've released. We're then going to talk about a new feature that should help making it easier for you to upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11. And finally, an exciting new quality update report that's entering private preview this year and should come early next year that I think is going to provide you with a lot of great information that you've been looking for. So as I mentioned, our big release with drivers and firmware this year, the management features for that, the response to that release has just been phenomenal. It's grown significantly faster than we expected, which has made it sometimes a little tricky for us to keep up, but it's been really exciting. And we've been getting some really great feedback about the results that customers have been getting with this feature. So let's dive into some of the things we've learned.
One thing we've seen customers do is create driver policies aligned with device models, rather than how they've assigned devices in their other update rings. I want to take a moment to talk about the pros and cons of creating model-based groups. Now on the left, you can see the traditional update ring policies with devices aligned based on organizations. On the right are driver policies created based on individual device models. I think we're seeing this frequently because we haven't shipped a feature that will show content based on applicability of the devices assigned to the policy like drivers. Feature and quality updates are applicable to nearly every device in the policy. Model-based groups can help those organizations that have special needs with certain hardware or those that just want to have more details. We actually designed the system so that you wouldn't need to do that. The system takes care of deploying approved drivers to only applicable devices. And that's our primary recommended way of doing it going forward. Some of the pros of model-based groups are that each driver policy has fewer drivers to manage. Like devices will have more overlap on the drivers that are applicable for them, and it's easier to know what devices are affected by the drivers available to the group. Again, most drivers will be available to a majority of the devices in the policy, and it's easier to know what's going on. Some cons of the model-based groups: this makes more groups to manage, adding some complexity, and also means you can't really align driver and quality deferrals. At some point, we're planning to introduce a feature that will help align reboots, and having driver policies aligned with quality update policies, assignments, will be more likely to make that work. Now let's talk about the typical duration of events that are the customer engagement points with the service. What I'm going to cover is what you should expect from the service and what we are aiming for. Due to the amazing growth we've experienced, we haven't always been able to hit these numbers, but this is what we are monitoring against. Upon assigning devices to a driver policy, they are automatically enrolled into the service for driver management. Device assignment and enrollment typically completes within 3 hours. Enrollment is what stops drivers from being offered to devices until they are approved. When adding large batches of devices, a common question we get is when should the driver setting in the update rings be moved from block to allow? See image 1. This should be good to move after 24 hours. This setting doesn't impact any part of the service, but if Windows drivers is set to block, approved updates will be offered to your devices, but they will be ignored and dropped by the device. Next, there is a break in the timeline here. because device scanning behavior varies and is based on device configuration, the status like it's on or off, and if it's connected to the internet. Scanning can be done daily or even every couple of days. Device scanning is a requirement for us to generate inventory of what drivers are available for it. But when enrolled devices do scan Windows Update, using the Check for Updates caller, see image 2, they will be sending results to our service, allowing us to curate a list of drivers available for all devices in your policy. Post-scan, driver inventory should be available in your policy after approximately 6 hours. Please note that Intune syncs data automatically every 24 hours, and a manual sync might be needed to get the latest information. Next, we're going to talk about driver approvals and offer ready. After an approval, drivers are offered to applicable devices roughly 6 hours after the approved start date time has passed. Please note that for a driver to be approved for a device, the device must have scanned, and the service must have identified the approved driver as applicable. An offer ready event is generated by the service upon processing the driver approval for each device and should appear in the Intune report within 6 hours. Last but not least, let's talk about device scan and client events. As with the earlier step, there's some variability to device scan time, but when devices with approved drivers scan, the next time they will receive the update on their next scan, if the update remains applicable. What I mean by that is peripherals like mice, keyboard, video camera will only be offered to the device if it's still connected to the device at scan time. For client events, you must ensure devices have the necessary Windows diagnostics enabled for client telemetry collection. More details are on the next slide. Client events such as downloading, installing, installed, waiting for restart, and errors are typically visible in Intune reports approximately 8 hours after the update is offered to the device.
After approving the drivers, the next thing probably want to know is what is the status of my drivers on the devices. That's where reporting setting is needed so that you can get that status for each device, for each driver. To enable that, you can go to Intune portal and enable Windows diagnostic data settings so that devices can start sending the client telemetry to Intune, which we can show in the Intune portal about each device and each driver. After you go to Intune portal and set the setting, it can take up to 24 hours before client devices can send the client telemetry. However, if you have not set the settings, you will still see the reports and the device status, but it will only be service-side events. And the last event that you will see is offer ready, which basically means that devices are now ready to get the drivers. Intune makes it easy for admins to know whether that setting is there or not. And to enable that, we have put a banner both in the list view of the policies and in the reporting view, where if it is not set, you will be able to click on the banner, go to the settings and enable it.
So as I mentioned, there's a number of things that have been key asks that we've received from a number of customers in providing feedback that we're excited to be working on and hoping to deliver to you sometime soon.
Applicable devices. The most frequently asked feature is to provide the list of devices applicable for each driver update. This helps answer the question of which devices each update will be offered to. This gives more insight and helps with ring assignment, provides better expectations on what device models are impacted by an update, and helps differentiate between similarly named drivers. Sometimes similarly named drivers can add some confusion. Drivers with the exact same name in a policy are different drivers that target different models, and this is a question we get occasionally. Also, the Recommended Drivers tab only shows the latest driver, and every once in a while, we get questions about versions that look related, like version 10 or version 11 of a driver, both showing up as recommended. This is because the driver is the latest version for an entirely different set of devices. This mock-up of what the feature can look like when you click on the count of applicable devices, a flyout will appear to provide a searchable list of all devices the update is applicable for, along with the device manufacturer and device model. You'll be able to search information from any of these columns or export the list if you want to investigate further. Now let's discuss driver model data. Sometimes identifying drivers is hard. And a little extra context can go a long way to provide some clarity on what driver does or what it's targeting. Driver model is provided by the publisher of the driver, and it is a list of the hardware components that the driver targets. In this example, Dell Monitor Driver targets several different monitor models. In some cases, like firmware or BIOS updates, it can list the device models for the firmware that it targets. For other updates like Bluetooth or networking, it will provide the name of the hardware, typically found in like the device manager. Importantly, this list can sometimes be rather long, so making this searchable to find the hardware that can impact you is important. In most cases, this feature shouldn't be needed, but for some drivers, it provides a little extra information needed to make informed approval decisions. Lastly, sometimes even driver model isn't enough. If you notice the driver model information is insufficient, I encourage you to talk with your OEM and tell them what it is that you need.
Another ask we've received frequently is the ability to do bulk approvals or other bulk actions. And so we've been seeing some really neat scenarios where some customers have been trying to approve all of the other drivers because those drivers also have value in securing devices and bringing the best updates, even if the driver publisher has not marked them as recommended yet. But there's a lot more other drivers. We've also seen value in this for customers that have chosen to use a manual approval policy because when they approve the drivers, they want to set the availability date to align with either Patch Tuesday or the Patch Tuesday plus deferral that the quality updates are for the devices associated with that policy. And so being able to set that start date allows a little bit of manual reboot control. And so the bulk actions is going to make either of those scenarios a lot easier for those of you who are doing that. The feature should show up hopefully by the end of this year and will follow a typical Intune pattern for doing bulk actions. So you'll select the bulk action option, and then in the action, you'll be able to choose whether or not you want to approve drivers, pause drivers, or decline drivers. And depending on what you choose, you'll be able to select from a list of applicable drivers for that action. For example, if you choose approve, you'll be presented with the list of all the drivers that are not currently approved. If you choose pause, you'll be presented with the list of currently approved drivers. You can then select those drivers that you want to take action on and then submit that and apply that to the set of drivers in one action. All right, next, Angie is going to show us some neat improvements that are coming that will help make Windows 10 to Windows 11 updates even easier.
Thanks, Stephen. When it comes to planning and executing your Windows 11 upgrade plan, we've heard your feedback that it's difficult to maintain separate groupings of eligible and non-eligible Windows 11 devices, and then to create separate deployments for each group. That's why we're introducing a new feature that simplifies this experience so that you can create a Windows 11 feature update deployment that will also automatically offer the latest Windows 10 to any devices in the deployment that aren't eligible for Windows 11. Now, you no longer have to go through the hassle of sorting your devices into their separate Windows 11 eligibility groups and assigning separate deployments for them. Whenever you create a Windows 11 feature update deployment, simply check the box underneath the drop-down menu to opt into this feature. When you select the checkbox, your chosen Windows 11 version will get offered to all devices in your audience that are eligible, and those that aren't eligible will get offered Windows 10 version 22H2. Now let's take a look at reporting. After you create your deployment, you can use the report as usual to understand and monitor the status of your devices. The newly added target version column on the far right of the table will make it easier for you to understand which devices got offered Windows 11 and which got offered Windows 10. One important note to keep in mind when you view your report is that when you first create the deployment, the target version for all devices will be your chosen Windows 11 version. However, as the devices scan and we're able to determine their eligibility for Windows 11, the target version column for each device will then get updated to the version that the device is getting offered. So that's either Windows 11 or the latest Windows 10. And we highly recommend adding it to your Windows Update Management arsenal to make upgrading to Windows 11 even easier.
Okay, let's talk about the new quality update distribution report that is in private preview now, and we're hoping to deliver to everybody sometime early next year. So this report will be found under the reports area under Windows Updates, and we've named it the Windows Update Distribution Report, and you'll see why in just a moment. So this is the top level of the report, and this report is derived from the OS version data that is in the devices table in Intune, but we merged some of the catalog data from the deployment service in order to provide better update names and to be able to not rely on the 10.0 ... version numbers. So for example, we're using the short name for a quality update in the first column. And so that gives you a real quick indicator of what this update is all about. For example, the 8B versus the 9D releases. I know that because it's a B week release, that it's a Patch Tuesday security release, and the 08 tells me it's in August. The 9D tells me that it's a September release, but the D week is the non-security preview release. And so that name is just, very descriptive of all the content. But we also are providing in the update type and release date the same information to allow you to be able to understand what that update is and give it the context. Now, when I took this screenshot, we still had a bug where the D releases were not showing the non-security label. So that'll be fixed in the private preview. So I just thought I'd point that out. We're going to show about 3 months worth of data per update information. Then any device that is on something older than that, we will put in the older releases bucket. So you can see how many devices are even older than 7B, for example. And then devices that are on Windows Insider builds or other builds that are not supported for these releases will be bucketed in the final row as well. So you can see and break those devices out that are just not even able to get those updates. We show the number of devices on the latest update or on each update, and that total column should add up, and we expect it to add up to all the devices that you're managing, all your Windows devices in the organization. And then the percentages makes it real easy for you to apply your own compliance rules to figure out how compliant your organization is. For example, if you have a 2 security releases policies, so in this report, every device needs to be on 9B or newer, you can quickly see that your compliance is about 68% for these devices. So that's a nice, easy thing to do. Now, this is just the first layer of the report. As you click in on an update name, we're going to break out and give you more data about the delivery of that update. We're showing you the breakout by Windows version, the number of devices that are on that version, how many have received that update or not. We're breaking out builds that are no longer applicable for quality updates, end of service type builds, providing a link to the KB article. So a lot of additional rich detail. And then finally, any of these device numbers are clickable so that you can click in and actually see the list of devices that are in that bucket and some additional data about those devices. So it just allows you to go a little bit deeper, find the specific devices, look at the OS version number, the feature and quality version if we have a mapping for those, how it's managed in the last Intune check-in date. They can give you some insights about the device activity and maybe help explain devices that aren't on current releases. All of these reports will have their filters at the top, so you can change the actual scope of that report if you want to, regenerate the report so you can actually then do some exploration within the report. Or you can go back and click the number in and regenerate the report from there. So we're excited about this report. This is going to provide data if you're using update rings for quality updates today, or if you just want to see where every device in the organization currently is, regardless of whether or not it's assigned to a policy or not. So we're excited to bring this to you, help rounding out the overall reporting story in Intune for Windows updates. So we'd like to thank you so much for taking the time to hear what we have to say, to see the new stuff that's coming. And beyond that, we are super grateful for all the feedback we receive, whether it's through LinkedIn, Twitter, other channels. We really do use this information to both inspire us, but also point us in the direction of areas we need to make improvements. And we just thank you for using our product as well and just being great customers.